Hello and welcome to our Friday night sports edition of The Drum. I'm Steve Cannane. Coming up, Pakistan's cricket team in crisis as the ICC suspends 3 of their top players on corruption charges. Kevin Pietersen learns that tweeting your thoughts about selectors can be a bad career move. And why is Libby cricket making a comeback? Our panel tonight, Simone Thurtell from ABC Grandstand, Scott Wales from ABC NewsRadio and Rhys Muldoon, writer for Inside Football and Mad Saints fan. First to the latest developments in the cricket betting scandal. The International Cricket Council has charged 3 Pakistan players with corruption offences over an alleged spot-fixing scam. Captain Salman Butt, Mohammad Amir and Mohammad Azif are the players who are alleged to have been involved in the bowling of deliberate no balls in last week's Test match against England.
We have provided them with that charge and provisionally suspended them, giving them the opportunity to respond within 14 days.
All 3 players say they're innocent and they'll appeal their suspension. Now, Simone, this means that they can't participate in any form of cricket until these charges are heard, and this is really what they had to do, isn't it, for the credibility of the game?
Rightly so, Steve. It had to have the ICC stepping in and actually taking this move, because I think most of us were fairly amused, might be the word, when we saw the Pakistan ambassador to Britain actually saying that he thinks they're being set up, that this is something that the players are innocent. And yes, all players are innocent until proven guilty, but the ICC had to make a decisive move. It wasn't going to come from the Pakistan Cricket Board. And this, I think, overwhelmingly, for most of us who have been involved with cricket broadcasting for a very long time, is so very disappointing. And I think the majority of us specifically look at Mohammad Amir, the 18-year-old who I remember in January standing on the SCG as he was marking out his run-up and waiting for that test to start, and he had that mix of excitement and I think nerves were there. He's this long, lanky kid. He was 17 at that stage, and he just had such style, and we watched him bowl and he was beautiful in that test at the SCG earlier. And
he's been amazing in England, hasn't he?
And since has proven what a talent he is. And now at the age of 18, if he is proven guilty on this charge, they're talking about life bans. And that, for a cricket fan, for any of us, is just extraordinary and so very disheartening.
It'd be very sad, wouldn't it, Scott? And particularly seeing he's from such a poverty-stricken area in the Swat Valley, an area dominated by the Taliban.
Yeah, exactly. I think, too, I mean, very sad for him, and it's just it's another chapter in the very sad story that is Pakistan cricket. You know, this is a country that's essentially stateless. They, I think, are formally based out of Dubai, but they don't play at home for various reasons, mostly connected with security. And you've got this young guy who, well, we'll find out exactly what he's done, but I'm guessing that the Pakistani players, their contracts are nowhere nearly as lucrative as, say, players from Australia, England, particularly India. And perhaps the ICC maybe needs to look back a few years and think, could more have been done? You think back when Geoff Lawson was coach of Pakistan, and I think he sort of came back thinking, you know, maybe the ICC needs to take more of a firm hand in how you sort of guide a country that, I mean, let's face it, they don't have a home ground to play on for a start.
And very
you can see where maybe one thing leads to another, and you've got young players being led astray.
It's been really interesting to listen to Geoff Lawson throughout the week as well, somebody who, as an ex-Australian cricketer, knows what it's like at that elite level, but also as the ex-Pakistan coach. And to hear him say, our very first reaction is to think it's all about money. From the Western world, it's all about greed. But he was very quick to point out that, like you've just said, Scott, there are so many variations on the lives of these players, and you don't know whether there are kidnap threats on some of their family members. We don't know what the circumstances are here, whether it be naivety on their part or whether it be greed. But I think it comes to pass that the Pakistan Cricket Board, Ijaz Butt, just has to go.
Rhys, one of the things they're talking about is life bans, but those punishments could be a little bit more medieval back in Pakistan,
I think so too. I think the ICC is actually in a very sort of tricky position with this about what kind of punishment should be meted out, because, you know, if you would imagine that just being a life ban from cricket would be the least of their problems. I mean, I would imagine that the punishment will far exceed the crime, if you know what I'm sort of saying. It could be generational. Who knows how sort of horrific it's going to be. So you would think the ICC, I mean, a lot of people already warn in, everybody calling for, you know, instant life bans and all this sort of stuff. You know, it's up to the ICC for justice to be seen to be done. and hopefully maybe soften some of the punishment that they're going to get elsewhere.
But this is just on the cricket side. On Tuesday in Lahore Supreme Court, we're going to see a Pakistani lawyer has actually brought treason charges against some of the players, and it's actually going to be played out in court over there, totally separate to the ICC. And the penalty for treason in Pakistan is the death penalty. Now, not that we're suggesting it'll get that far, but just what you said there, Rhys, it goes so much further.
Yeah, it's a bit like the World Cup with, you know, when there was that, I think it was a Uruguayan goalkeeper who was killed, you know, after the World Cup, and it sort of instantly made me think of that sort of scenario, I have to say.
Do we think that maybe the ICC has, pardon the pun, dropped the ball a little here? That really, for the past 12 months at least, they've been having this staring competition with the Board of Cricket Control in India, trying to, you know, position themselves to not lose control of the game. And the whole focus is really about India, it's about Australia, it's about the Ashes in terms of where the money comes from. And you look at the situation in the West Indies, you know, over the years, OK, maybe they created some of their own problems, but it does seem like some former, you know, long-standing powers of world cricket have sort of been left to their own devices and left to slide to some extent.
One of my favourite quotes from the week came from Daryl Hare, who said that we should actually sack the ICC anti-corruption unit and hire the News of the World.
Well, they do it in the Sydney Test. They were there at the Sydney Test and they concluded that nothing was untoward, and I think we all saw what happened.
In the words of Mandy Rice-Davies, they would say that.
Yeah.
Well, is there a broader problem here where cricket itself, and I was reading all these articles on Cricinfo, for the best source for cricket information around the world, and down the side is all this these links for betting companies where you can go and bet.
Exactly.
And so we're now seeing this year too, Cricket Australia and Channel 9 are increasing the amount of access to betting and to Betfair in particular. So we've got on the one hand all these people being outraged by corruption, but then we're seeing more and more links with betting agencies. Is that a problem?
Well, it is, particularly when you try to, you know, everyone's trying to claim the moral high ground, like, well, look what Pakistan are doing. There's all this finger-pointing going on, but you watch the rugby league tonight. You know, there'll be updates throughout the match on these are the current odds on Brisbane. And I think the other thing too is, look, maybe you can't do much with illegal bookmakers. They're going to do whatever they want. But in Australia, where bookmakers, both the corporates and the tabs, are regulated by state and federal laws, maybe all these novelty options, which came up with that dodginess, alleged dodginess with the penalty goal in the Cowboys Bulldogs rugby league game, maybe you just say, well, you can bet on direct outcomes. But where you've got fringe elements where players might go, look, it's not going to affect the outcome of the match, I'll take that. I think
when it's a no ball, like you can so imagine why it'd be easy to talk someone into going, it's just a no ball, you know, but it's the sort of thin edge of the wedge kind of.
It is.
Maybe
that's fiddling at the edges.
Cricket Australia are certainly saying that this contract they have with Betfair, they have the last veto on what can be bet on.
Right.
So they won't be allowing you can bet on the third ball or the fourth over
Kevin
to
Pietersen's
be a no ball. Or how many I mean, it's so interesting when you read about the subcontinent what they bet on. They bet on how many players are wearing sunglasses in the first session of play in the field. I mean, it really is that diverse, and that's how it can be so corrupt. But I have real issues with betting being so heavily linked, and I think there is hypocrisy.
But it's always been linked, Simone.
It has
because
always been.
If you go back to the origins of cricket, I remember reading this years ago that one of the reasons there's two innings in cricket is to increase the opportunities to bet. You know, that when cricket first started, the games were very much associated with taverns in England, so there was drinking and there was betting, and that was a big part of the game. So, I mean, we have this...
a lot then.
We have nothing's changed.
And the option is banning it is not going to work. We know that it just drives it underground, and that's the problem in India, that it's all illegal betting, and they're now looking at whether they can make it an industry that they can legitimise and therefore have some control over. So you're right, banning it is not the option, but I think controlling it is the struggle we have.
If you maybe rule them out, you do go some way to trying to actually...
And what about paying decent wages to cricketers in developing nations like Pakistan and the West Indies? To somehow make them immune to these kind of agents and bookies who want to,
But that's always a tough one. I mean, they always say the same thing with politicians of you have to bump up their wages and all that sort of stuff, because if you go, what is the betting market worth? I'm not sure how you would work out what the appropriate wage is to stop gambling. I mean, that's almost impossible. But
well, still on cricket, and England player Kevin Pietersen is known for being a bit of a prima donna, and this week he had one hell of a dummy spit. When the selectors failed to name him in the one-day squads against Pakistan, the South African-born batsman decided to let fly with a rant on Twitter. He said, "Done for the rest of summer, man of the World Cup T20, and dropped from the T20 side too. It's an F-up." Now he's apologised, saying he didn't mean to make his outburst public. Now, Rhys, you're a bit of a mad tweeter. Have you got any advice for KP?
I think I have advice for pretty much anybody who's involved in Twitter, and it's also one of the glories of Twitter as well, is that you're always just one tweet away from ruining your career, which is one of the great tensions of Twitter for mine. Like, I mean, which is, you know, the great sort of the fine line you've got to walk. Obviously, Kevin was, tried to write foul up. But,
he did, didn't he? Let's hear Kevin's apology.
As anybody who knows is on Twitter, you can direct message to your friends or whoever's following you and you're following them. And it was something that wasn't for the public domain, and I must apologise for it ended up in the public domain, and also apologise for the language I used in it. I mean, I would never ever swear on Twitter.
Fair excuse, Rhys?
It's absolutely possible. I mean, I'm hoping that, you know, I know Warnie's also a keen Twitterer. I'm sure his direct messaging goes pretty wild occasionally. But his actual excuse is very possible, to go like where you go, I intend to go a direct message, but it becomes a public reply. That's absolutely feasible. But also I sort of go, I mean, on a bigger picture, I sort of like, I love the fact that he tweets something like that. I mean, I agree with the thing of, because there is basically a rule that everybody on Twitter tends to sort of follow, of not swearing on Twitter, which is very true. That's one of the few things that somehow Twitter manages to keep sort of swearing out of it. But
the candid nature of it as a
that's the fun.
Media is good, isn't
Absolutely.
it?
I mean, you want to see some more Kevin Pietersen and sort of, you know, Warnie shenanigans or whoever it is, you know, and to hear like...
And they're kind of like-minded individuals, Pietersen and Warne, aren't they? They played cricket together at Hampshire. They got on very well. And
I think they've got
problems with technology, don't they?
They do have problems with technology. Well, they've embraced it so lovingly. You know, but I think they both have a similar mentality, which for mine, Warnie sort of started, which was bringing a football mentality to cricket. With, you know, a similar sort of bloodthirstiness, which Kevin Pietersen's got a little bit of that about him too, you know.
Do you know, Twitter is fabulous from a journalist's perspective, because we actually get to see the true indication of who these people are.
That's assuming, Simone, that their manager hasn't tweeted for them.
Well, that's true, but
right.
we do find, and this is something that organisations, sporting organisations, are really struggling with at the moment, because most sports people do have accounts. A lot of teams have an account, and they tweet back and forth across the codes. We get to find out sometimes information by just reading what's actually happened. I know Rupert Guinness at one point from the Sydney Morning Herald found out when Lance Armstrong was going to arrive in Australia, purely because Lance tweets so much, he went quiet. And Rupert figured he must be on a plane.
Yeah. Right.
So there's so much that you can garner from it, and people are just loving the human nature. Some of our teams are so devoid of any personality, and they're so media speak, and they're so well trained and put into a little bit of a box. So
and they never want to put themselves above the team, which is certainly Kevin Pietersen's not guilty of that.
Well, the great saying, there's no I in team, but there's a number of them in individual brilliance.
That's great. Now, Scott, the Australian cricket team loves winding up Kevin Pietersen. I think they call him the Ego, and Fig Jam as well. Do you reckon they'll be...
Fig Jam?
Fig Jam, which I can't